Cool. Okay, so we're talking about money. This was just a 3-week series on money. Week 1, we talked about let's make more money. And that's actually that's a biblical concept. Jesus talked about making money. Last week, we talked about saving money and how we should pay attention to things we spend our money on to think about others. Well, this week, we're talking about giving away money. And we want to talk about what do we give our money away to. So I thought it would be fun for us to begin the message with a question. If you were just handed $50 and told to give it away this week, how would you do it? So take a second to think about it. How would you be generous with money? So in some ways, we think that the most difficult part is making enough and having enough to spare to be able to give it out. But sometimes you may have money and you don't know how to really bless somebody or to give to somebody in need. It might be awkward or uncomfortable, or you might be uncertain. It may not come right to mind. Maybe for some of you guys, you know someone you would give the $50 to, you would pay for this or that. But for the rest of us, it may take a second to think about what could I do with that. So this is not rhetorical. This is for you guys. Maybe, yeah, I guess just if you have something, raise your hand or something. Let me know if you have an idea. Alicia, you give it to the church? Hey, we got a plant in here. That's great. We're going to be talking about that. I'm going to build a little bit of a case for why the local church is something you should consider giving to. Emma.
Well, I do that. I believe in coordinate something like me. Might be a person.
Yeah. And so you see giving money to somebody as planting a seed, that it's so maybe like something that can help them thrive better. You see it as
Well, I just, as the Lord leads me to do in your life, I just plant the seed in your life. $50, $20, whatever God tells me to do.
Yeah.
What you do with it is your business.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're loose. Like you're not going to be super controlling. It's not like you're saying, okay, did you buy the thing that you said you would buy or whatever? Yeah. That's good. Anyone else? Yeah, Amanda. The Humane Society. Why is that? Okay. They're always full. There's a need that you know. Yeah, that's great. What else? What else are we thinking? If you're just giving $50, I'll let. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, listen to the Spirit. But if the Spirit was speaking to you right now, what would it be?
Oh, so the Spirit wasn't talking to me right now?
Yeah, what's God saying?
If I have $50, my kid.
Your kids. Okay.
Or whatever.
Yes. All right. Is that anyone else? Give you guys a chance.
Well, if I had $50 now, I would plant it.
Aw, that's really great. Thank you. Here at Anchor Church. Again, like I said, we're going to be talking about that. So, okay. So here's the thing. I came prepared. I brought $50 with me. So took some money. Whose was the favorite answer out of here? Who do we say? Emma. Okay. So we'll just do one for today. I wasn't sure what would happen, but we'll just here. Give it up for Emma. This is from Hannah and I to you to plant a seed.
I want to plant a seed in your mouth.
Oh no! Okay, there's a box in the back. We don't know how this is gonna go, but we tried something, you know? All right. This whole series, we've been talking about John Wesley. He gave a talk. He gave a famous sermon, and he talked about make as much as you can, save as much as you can so that you can give as much as you can. And he had some extreme beliefs, at least by our standards today. He preached back in the 1700s, and so the way we saw money then was a bit different. We are very much of a consumer culture since John Wesley. But he said this. He said, can you be able to say this prayer? Lord, you see that I'm going to spend this money on whatever it is, and you know that I'm going to act as your trusted steward according to your design. Everyone say trusted steward. That everything we have, we've been given as managers, and we want to be trusted managers, trusted stewards of what God has provided us. And so he makes an argument. He talks about, he says, if you're going to prioritize stuff, you start with your basic needs, you and your family. So thank you, Jay. Yeah, he would say, that's good. That's good. Make sure your family has everything your family needs. And then above that, look to Christian brothers and sisters. So this has been a tradition for a while to say that your giving and your generosity should start with the church or start with Christians around you, because we're a family. We're an extended family. So he made that point, and then he said, and then thirdly, give to the world. If you still have anything left, give to the needs of those around in the world. So, honestly, I don't know if God would be mad if you moved the order a bit, but I want to make an argument and build a case for why you should consider the local church. We've never done this in, I think, the 4 or 5 years that we've been here in Champaign. We've never had a talk that was on Give to Anchor. We tend to be a little more timid about that. We never want to be manipulative. We never want to guilt anybody. But we do care about this ministry. We care about what God's doing here at Anchor Church, and we would love for you guys to partner with us. So today we're gonna talk about the temple, and then we're gonna talk about Anchor. How's that sound? Sound okay? So if you have a problem with that, I don't know. I mean, there'll be other sermons. Don't worry. We won't preach on this every week. So let's talk about 1 Chronicles 29. This is at the very end of the book where David wants to build the temple. King David was so excited about building the temple to God. The temple was so important, and the temple was critical in the mindset of the Jews of that time. This was like the new Garden of Eden. This was the new place where heaven and earth overlapped one another. This was so critical. And before there was a temple, there was a tabernacle, which was like a tent. And David was really, really feeling bad because he had a palace, God had a tent. He didn't like that, so he says, God, I'm going to build you a house. And you know what God says? God says, no, you're not. Your son is going to build me a house. David says, fine, well, at least let me donate to the construction of the temple. And so I'm going to draw a parallel between Anchor Church as a place of worship and the temple as the heaven on earth place. And so we're going to follow along. There's a bit of the story that's so much here. So he says to the people, so this is King David talking to the people of Israel about this temple. He says, my son Solomon, whom God has clearly chosen, who God has clearly chosen as the next king of Israel, is still young and inexperienced. The work ahead of him is enormous. For the temple he will build is not for mere mortals, it's for the Lord God himself. There is something really significant happening here. He's not just making any palace, he is making God's temple. And so then David goes on to say how he's going to take a lot of the nation's gold and silver and bronze, and it goes on to talk about how he's going to collect all this. And then he says something else. He says, and now, because of my devotion to the temple of my God, I'm going to give all of my own private treasures of gold and silver to help in the construction. Now, this isn't just a lot of gold and silver. This is literal tons of gold and silver. And it's not just he's pulling it out of the business account or the government account. He says, I'm pulling it out of my own personal savings. This is so important to me. I don't know any other important thing to give my money to. And so here we go. The next, I think, verse 4, I am donating more than, 112 tons of gold from Ophir and 262 tons of refined silver. He's not holding back. This isn't just loose spare change. This isn't just like the coins in his piggy bank that he saved up a little bit. This is like major sacrifice, major investment he is giving. And then as it goes on, it talks about how more people are invited in. So now, who will follow my example and give offerings to the Lord today? And I love that it says, my example. You see, us as leaders here at Anchor, we're not going to ask you to do something we're not willing to do. And so every single month, for several years now, we have given $500 a month to Anchor. That's kind of been our steady, this is what we've done, this is a priority to us. And so we donate. It seems a little odd because we get paid by Anchor, and we give it back to Anchor because this is so important to us. And even as a practice, you could say, well, why don't you just get paid $500 less? And we could. But then we miss out on the worship and the practice of giving back to God and helping build a place of worship. And so we've been doing that. We're making a little more this year. We took on other jobs, and so we've actually kept it at $500, and then we have a couple other $100 we'll give to other things. So people in need or things that come up, or we're going to give some to like other ministries and stuff, but we're keeping it at the 500, and so to us that's something significant that we want to be consistent with. And so I say that, I'm not bragging by any means. I'm sure there's much more generous people than us, but just to say that we're not asking you to do something we wouldn't be willing to do ourselves. And David does the same. He says, will you follow in my example? And people do it. The other leaders and others start giving, and they contribute tons of gold and silver and bronze and all the stuff. And after we get this whole description of the people giving, we get this. The people rejoiced. Everyone say rejoiced. They rejoiced over the offerings, for they had given freely. Everybody say freely. Freely. Maybe just like lift your arms up, say freely. No guilt, no arm twisting. No, did you smack somebody? They gave freely and wholeheartedly. So because there were tons, literal tons, that were contributed, so they gave, wholeheartedly, but they weren't, arm twisting happening. They gave to the Lord, and King David was filled with joy. There it is again. The people were rejoicing. King David was full of joy. The act of giving and building up the place of God and the place of worship was an act of joy. And it goes on. And David says a prayer after this. They celebrate and he prays. And I love this prayer. He says, yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, the majesty. Everything in the heavens and on earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. This is King David saying, this isn't my kingdom. This is the Lord's kingdom. This isn't our church. This is the Lord's church. This is Jesus' church. And we get to honor him and praise him. And a part of giving is an act of worship. And there's something beautiful to God about acts of generosity when we give it out of joy, out of wholeheartedly, voluntarily, willingly. And it leads to this place of worship. And he goes on in his prayer. He says this, but who am I and who are my people that we could give anything to you? Everything we have has come from you, and we give you only what you first gave us. It always goes back to this. It's this recognition that what I have is mine. So John Wesley has this line. He says, I don't want you to give 10%. I don't want you to give 20%. I want you to give 100%. I want you to see everything that you have as a gift from God. And then he goes on in this prayer. He says, I know, my God, that you examine our hearts, and you rejoice. So we're talking about the people rejoicing. We're talking about King David rejoicing. God himself rejoices when you find integrity there. You know I have done all this with good motives, and I have watched your people offer their gifts willingly and joyously. He goes on, O Lord, the God of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Israel, make your people always want to obey you. See to it that their love for you never changes. And then finally he prays for his son Solomon. He says this in the next verse, verse 19, I believe. No? Oh, okay. I didn't have a slide for that. But he prays for his son Solomon, and he says, I pray that he would continue to obey you too. And so here we go. We have generosity. We have giving to a place of worship linked with joy all around, linked with worship, and then linked with obedience and love and all of this. This is how we show our love. This is how we foster a love for the Lord. And so I encourage you to consider if you are looking for what to give to. You know, we talked about make money, save money. So now if you've been able to have some money to offer to others in need, definitely give to the poor. Definitely give to the Humane Society. Definitely give to your family. Definitely give and plant seeds. But consider the local church. Consider the place of worship, because this is a place that God delights when people give to and invests in. Place of worship. So let me talk to you specific now about Anchor. What happens when you give to Anchor? You may not know this, but some of you might know this, but Anchor does not receive government subsidies. We don't receive any help from the government. We do, I guess that's a little wrong. There are some tax cuts, but it gets complicated, and in some ways it's really nice. So like if we bought a property, I believe we don't pay income property tax, but we don't own a property, so that doesn't apply to us. With our salary, there is a housing allowance, which helps a little bit, but then we actually get charged a little more on top of that. So it's somewhat of a wash, but it is still a benefit to pastors. The government does offer some of that. But we're dependent on donations to do everything that we do. So anything from kids' crafts to background checks for kids, for the kids workers to make sure it's safe, to we've got a website that we run. We run ads to invite people to church, especially for Juneteenth. We've got an ad going on. It's actually Courtney inviting people to church to come for Juneteenth. We do all kinds of things. We've got a bunch of subscriptions and things. There are fees that you would be surprised of. Things like we got to pay $500 a year. This is coming up soon. $500 a year to be able to play worship music at a church, because the royalties have to go to the writers of the songs. So we legally are required to pay that. Isn't that crazy? What is it? It's like $2,000 a year, maybe $3,000 now for insurance every year. So liability, if somebody gets hurt, we want to make sure that we're looking out for people if they get hurt at a service. Not that ever happens, right? But I got hurt at a service last year, so we're glad we have insurance for that when it works, and other things, So and a big chunk of it is rent. We pay $600 a month to New Life Korean Church, which is amazing. It's a great deal. They've been so kind and generous to us to charge just $600 a month, but it's a cost. It's a cost. So all of our donations, everything goes to making that happen, and then our salary is included in that too. So Hannah and I, we're full-time. Now we've cut back. We're technically 20 hours a week. 20 hours a week instead of 40. But we do, some weeks turns out to be 40 or more, I'm sure. But we have cut back, and we've taken on other jobs and stuff. But we are both equally, employed at Anchor. And so when you give to Anchor, it helps us do the things that we're called to do, whether it's Hannah meeting up with somebody and discipling a woman and helping her grow in her faith, or if it's me and we do like pastoral care, we reach out to people. You may not know this, but it's kind of a cool opportunity. Again, by being the pastor here, years ago, someone from jail reached out to the church and asked for a pen pal. And so about every month for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been going back and forth, and I've just been trying to encourage and speak life into them. We talk faith, and just a little ministry kind of extension to what's happening in Anchor that I get to do because people are giving to the church. We do a lot of things. It could look different week to week. We're writing newsletters and blogs and communicating, sending out emails, keeping in touch with people. We're doing what we call pastoral care. We'll check in on people. Maybe we'll send somebody a little trinket or a little gift saying we're thinking of them. We'll ask how can we pray for them. We communicate with our donors who are outside of Anchor, who have been giving for years, some of them, and we let them know what's going on in the church and different things that are happening. We'll meet with people. We'll invite people to our house. We'll have dinner with people. We'll host people. We will do all kinds of things. We manage multiple social media accounts. We'll manage the website. Sometimes, some days that there's a lot of time invested just to do a little bit on the website. We're constantly learning and growing and talking to coaches and watching training videos and reading books and things and trying to understand things like theology and psychology and how best to minister to people and how best to grow a church and what are best practices in a church. And we're learning marketing and trying to say what are different ways we can reach people. And we're trying out different things and on and on. I know Hannah helped me with a list. I thought I'd memorize it all, but I didn't. I'm sure there's other things. We try to be there for people who are having a really hard time as best as we can. We try to get meal trains organized, or we try to reach out, or we do babysitting occasionally if people need it. Anything we can, because we're here to serve the church. We're here to serve you guys. We can't do it all. We might say no if we can't handle it, but we want to be there for others. We manage follow-up, and if somebody comes to church for the first time, we want to make sure we've reached out to them and we've connected with them, things like that. And so all of this stuff takes time, and so when you donate, you're helping all this stuff be possible. You're helping it happen. Now that's sort of the nuts and bolts and things, but let me tell you some of the cool stuff that's happened. When we look at the last 4 or 5 years, it is incredible, the lives that have been impacted. I know you look at a room like this, and it's in the summer, and you look around and you're like, okay, you may not realize just the impact that Anchor has had over the years. And there's been people who have come from, have been international students, have come to Christ, have gotten baptized, have gotten discipled, and then they move back. So Prashasti or Katya, I know Hannah spent a lot of time with them, keeps in touch with them, and their lives have been changed. And then they've gone back to Mexico or India, and they're impacting people. And so there's such a ripple effect. It makes me think of what Emma said about the seed that's been planted. All throughout, for the last 4 or 5 years, seeds have been planted. And people have moved to different parts of the U.S., different parts of the world with those seeds that have been there. Some really cool things have happened. When we think of a service, sometimes for some of us, we come week in and week out, and it becomes a little normal and natural to be here at a service. But some people come to a big Sunday, and that might have been their first time coming to church in a long time, and it has a huge impact on them. I think of after our Easter service, at the very end, we dismissed to go out to the Easter egg hunt, and this kid must have been 11 or 12 years old. He's with his family. He breaks out from his family. He comes straight to me. He darts to me, and he says, "I want you to know, you just changed my life." I have no idea what he meant by that. I gave the gospel. I gave a gospel invitation. If you want to follow Jesus, raise your hand. Let's say a prayer. Maybe he was talking about that, but I don't know. He wasn't specific with me. But you know what I do know is I know what it was like to be 11, 12 years old, going to church when my family wasn't going to church, and I was soaking in everything that the pastor was saying. And that shaped me and formed me into the person I was. And I think in that one moment there, because we did an Easter egg hunt and we invited the community out and this room was packed, he was there. And we don't know what kind of seed was planted, but I believe God did something significant in his life. And probably even more, he's probably further ahead than I am, because when I was his age, I would not have had the courage to go up to the pastor and say anything, let alone to say, you've changed my life. And this is happening all the time. God is changing lives here at Anchor. I think of, since Easter, we've had more kids come than we've ever had before. And they're becoming friends, and they're running into church, and they're bringing such energy to our service and our congregation. But to think of how God is shaping them and how God is showing his love to them and how they are growing in the love of Jesus week in and week out is incredible. It's incredible. I think of something Amanda said months ago. She came up and gave a testimony. It was so powerful, moved me nearly to tears. I got to repeat just a little bit of what she said. She said that Anchor is a family for those who need it most. She said Anchor has been there for us at some of our worst times. I love that. We're a family. Zitlali, who I think is getting back from studying abroad. She leads our kids ministry with Evan. When she was gone, she messaged us and she said she's thinking of us. She saw an Anchor that made her think of Anchor, and she said, "You are my chosen family." I'm like, oh, that's incredible. That's what God's called us to be such a loving community, that we're like a family to one another, and that is just so powerful. So powerful. I think of Armani, who he spent a stint out on the streets. He didn't have a place to stay. He got a place to stay, and that was right in line when we were looking for some community service to do. And we had this idea, what if we get together some like gift bags for people at, I think it was called See You at Home at the time, but like Strident now, where people who are on the streets could have some toiletries, food, and snacks and things. And Armani headed it up because he's like, I know what this is like. I love that. Someone who understands, and he's like, I know what it feels like to be in need, and so I want to be a part of the solution. I want to help others out. And so he was able to be a part of that. And on, I mean, I can go on and on